I tell you about everything in the world and on the world and above the world and about the world, as well as around the world and through the world and in the world and near the world. I tell you about the winds and the weathers and the oceans and the lands and the continents that have risen and sunk since this little hunk of dirt first whirled off the burning sun. I tell you the men and the women that bathed their eyes in the zigzag lightning and hugged and kissed in the rumbling thunder, and about every Union wheel that ever did run down a Union road or down a Union rail, and every puff of Union smoke that ever did rise up out of a big, high Union smokestack.
Hi, yeah, my name's Gabriel.
There's a better
I'm a
world
student.
is to come
I'm
in.
studying
Tell you
international
why,
affairs and public policy.
There's a better world is to come in. Tell you why.
I'm Brandon. I study Twitter and Reddit, and my major is media.
Nice. Yeah. Well, what is it? I'm also in college as well, and getting my major as well. So still learning with things. So let's get on to today. For this podcast, we will go over certain topics and go over some analysis of them, and we will discuss what our thoughts are and what other people can take from it as well.
Yeah, so today is April 13th, 2020, and what a very unique and kind of crazy day for us to start this. For this to be our first inaugural podcast, because today Bernie Sanders has endorsed Joe Biden for president.
The worst.
Yeah.
The worst.
This, of course, coming after a kind of like establishment consolidation, leading to Sanders's defeat of sorts on Super Tuesday, and then kind of like this whole virus thing happening, and then the primaries being effectively over, and yeah, now the world sucks, and Sanders endorsed Biden. So yeah, that's cool, I guess.
I mean, I kind of saw this. I saw this in the animal bones. There was always going to be that sort of like time where we were going to have to accept that concessions were probably going to have to be made, and one of them is essentially the campaign vouching for whoever won. And I don't know, has Warren actually come out and endorsed anybody?
She hasn't, which is kind of hilarious now.
Which,
now
yeah, I mean, yeah,
are joking that she's like the actual true leftist candidate because she hasn't endorsed Biden and Sanders has. So
I mean, I'm just waiting for like somebody within the campaign or Warren themselves to turn this into like parlay this into them being the actual victim in the whole entire thing. So I mean, I kind of always saw this happening, but it just gives more like rhetoric and ammo to the people who currently seem to be hating on Bernie or bust people. But you know,
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I gotta agree with you. This is like doesn't come as a surprise to me at all. And like, I think if you thought that Sanders was gonna run some kind of like third-party vanguard campaign, I don't think you understand Sanders as much as you think you did. I think it's like pretty obvious, like in the way that he conducted his campaign and like his kind of hesitancy to actually play politics and kind of call out Joe for what he is, which is like now kind of come out that oopsie daisy, he did a little bit of rape back in the day, and is just like an overall awful person, both in policy and in virtue. But he, like, Sanders never attacked him, basically, and now it's come out post-mortem. Everybody knows who Breonna Joy Gray is, I'm assuming, here. For anybody that's listening, that is, I believe, his deputy campaign manager, I believe. She does some of the communications for the Sanders campaign. Like, it's come out post-mortem that she and others within the campaign wanted to like play more hardball and attack Biden, but that Sanders would basically turn them down at any single point. So like
Which
he's just
is
too nice. He's
like,
too nice.
I don't know. There's that also. I don't know. Maybe it's also just too weak as well. Like, I mean, come on. You have like the worst qualities in an individual in Biden, which is just like somebody asks him a question about his campaign or saying that they're willing to come behind him if their candidate drops out, and he fucking adjusts their shirt and tells them to fucking vote for another person. I mean, there's that, and then the fact that allegations have come out about him, and it's not just Tara Reid. It's like other things where he's just like done and said shit. So I mean, it's like you have all this shit stacking up against your opponent, and you're just gonna play nice with them. For what reason? Like, this is the stuff where I think actual leftists will all agree that an individual with these sorts of characteristics and qualities is not at all who you want to be, like, in a position of leadership. I mean, granted, there's some of us that don't even want that position to exist, but still, like, if it has to exist, you don't want somebody with fucking mashed potato brains leading us. So I mean,
I'm not Bernie Sanders, but I can like guess as to why he didn't want to attack. I mean, again, like I'm just guessing here, but I'm assuming that for the same reason that he endorsed Biden is the same reason that he didn't attack Biden, which is that in his mind, he doesn't want to make the potential antithesis to Trump, like only a potential opponent against Trump, look weaker than he already is. Like Bernie, the way Bernie thinks is not in the sense of like atypical online leftist, right? He's thinking strictly within electoralism. He's thinking strictly within this election cycle, within what's at stake. And whether or not that's the right take, obviously that's up for discussion and up for debate. But I would assume that's why he chose not to attack. I don't think it's necessarily just because he's a nice person, but I also think that he perhaps believes that there's quote unquote much more at stake. That's somebody else's words, not mine. At weakening the potential Democratic candidate against Trump. I don't know. Again, I'm not speaking for him. That's just my presumptuous reason why he might have not attacked. So
I don't know, and I think I mean, we're probably gonna get into this, but the reasons why some people would be more like apt to vote for like Trump over Biden is in kind of the way that Trump does make you fucking ignore a lot of these things with the like some of the actions that he does and some of the things that he says on Twitter. I mean, like, if he gets like a rhetorical like he just fucking hits Biden with some like rhetorical funny shit. Like, he had some shit on Twitter that I was dying at, which was him like saying that like Joe Biden doesn't even know where he is. Like, write the tweets that he did when he was asked about them, like, because there was tweets going against Trump. Sometimes it's all it needs for the fucking electorate. Like, it's just somebody fucking rocking the other person, and that's kind of all it needs. And
right, it's a
I mean, we
cult
were
of
talking about,
personality. It's a cult of personality.
yeah,
It's like when you're up against I mean, I think even there are reasons why one of the biggest voting blocks in this country isn't Democratic or Republican. It's we don't vote or we don't participate. Right? There's a sense of apathy of electoralism in this country, and it's because our system sucks. The establishment sucks. People don't like the establishment. People know that the establishment on both the Democratic side and the Republican side are garbage. They're corrupt. They are not looking out for the best interest of the average person, blah 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 blah. And so when you have like a cult of personality who comes in and says, okay, yeah, I'm gonna like fight that and do my best to quote drain the swamp or whatever the fuck he says, which of course, like, it doesn't matter if he's telling the truth or not. It's people want something to believe in. They want to believe that this outsider candidate is the one who's gonna like fix everything or at least like stir the pot, right? So, I mean, it's really not a surprise at all that somebody like Trump does a lot better, at appealing to some section of the country than like somebody like Biden, or even the way that Sanders did, when the way that he plays nice, right? Like that's really the root of the problem is Bernie played too nice. I think. I mean, I think that's everybody's opinion here.
Yeah, I mean, he played like a strategic game that was like never going to win, and I kind of saw that. I kind of saw the writing on the walls. Especially, it became super apparent after Super Tuesday, and ever since then, like it's just weird because like you know what the answer is, and then when it like happens, you're like more mad at yourself for kind of being like right about things. Like I knew I knew that like people who are calling themselves like leftists before now, and then now that Bernie has dropped out, they're like no longer like really running with that like name and shit, or like the ideals even behind like leftism or whatever, and are now like saying like, well, what other chance do like we really have? Like we need to do like harm reduction, which is just such a fucking like awful argument to make. Like it's such a weak argument to make. And then
I mean, I don't know. I guess we could have a discussion on it. I don't want to leave Paul out of this for too long though. Paul, do you have anything to say about just like the general of news of Sanders endorsing Biden?
Oh yeah. One of the things that you brought up earlier was the involvement of just people expecting him to be a third party, and well, a lot of people miss that. People forget that their Bernie's audience is more radical than per se Sanders, which
I
is could be
agree.
a good thing because there is like a base of just keep on going forward with the leftist movement and not concede to anything, which is a very useful thing that people can build upon. So the best thing right now is just to look into the future and to make sure just keep on going and think of new ways we can get more people in and actually build like a strong movement and try not to concede at any step at any point. Because if we are holding cards that people deem valuable, like a voting base in especially like swing states, then they will have to give in. A party will have to give in for them. Because like Trump, if he wins this election, he can't, his populism and the inflation with the common people will go away, and so that swing vote in those many of those states, if we get them to be more leftist than reactionary movements, then we will have very powerful cards that we can use to get things going with just not being horrible, like actually bring change in the government.
Right. Well, you brought up the P word, populism, and it got me thinking. Just like really quickly, like give me a 2-word answer. What do you think are the odds that Trump wins again? Like as of right now, obviously things are going to change, and like my thoughts on who's going to win are going to change as time goes on. But as a snapshot on time, on April 13th, 2020, who do you think has a better chance of winning in November right
Trump.
now?
Yeah. If say 2
I'm
words,
sorry, dude.
if you're
I'm
gonna say
sorry,
2
dude.
words, I would say very high.
It's
Because
very high.
yeah, because of just people are looking at popular votes, but as we know, it doesn't work. So it won't. So nothing will come from that, and we actually have to look at the swing states. I'm looking at projections, and like the ones that give Biden the most likely to win and all that stuff, they say like Ohio's gotta go to Biden. I talked to many people to Ohio. Ohio's not gotta go to Biden.
I don't know. I'm more 50-50 or maybe 60-40 in Trump's favor. Like I think that
I don't
that
know.
number
60,
will definitely
40,
change.
60-40 in terms of odds is really, really like good though. In terms of like voting odds, that's
I
really
mean, maybe.
good.
Yeah, I don't know enough about that to say. I'm just saying, like, just off the cuff. like from what I can perceive. Like I don't think it's necessarily in the bag for Trump
Dude,
by
if
any
I
means.
mean, like
Like,
honestly, they're looking at it from a ratings perspective at this point. They're not even looking at it from like any sort of like harm or like policy. Like none of that matters. It's all like a ratings thing at this point. And if Trump like pulls shit as like even half as aggressive as he did against like Jeb Bush or Ted Cruz, and like the shit that came out of that is over, dude. Like it's over because we're dealing with an electorate that doesn't care most of the time about issues or policies. They don't give a shit. They don't give a shit about the history of the candidate either, dude. So
I mean, yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I mean, I already said like the American electorate, they're very apathetic.
and
For good
before
reason too.
and I
Um,
mean like before Sweet Paul gave us his analysis, uh, what the whole like harm reduction thing that I was saying, like if you have a problem with me saying that that's a bad argument, please don't hesitate to come at me because I
oh, I'm
know where
not
it's
saying it's a
coming
bad
from.
argument. I absolutely am not saying it's a bad argument.
I know where it's coming from, people, and it's so blatantly petty bourgeois that it's unbelievable that people still come with that argument about voting for Biden. It's so stupid, but whatever.
Well, okay. Oh boy. Okay, so
No,
I
no,
okay from the
the concept isn't stupid, but using it as an argument to Biden is, like, in my opinion,
right. Okay,
not
so
smart.
but then it's important to distinguish then like make sure that we don't
Yeah,
talk at two different wavelengths here, right? Because
right.
I
Yeah,
think the argument like the actual um like normative aspect of that argument is true, right? Like I don't think there's any
yeah.
denying that Biden is definitely better for Trump for certain groups of people. But in the law, if you look at the bigger picture, right? And like the kind of a more political movement analysis, I think you can also very easily make the argument that Trump for another 4 years is better in the long run potentially. Now, obviously, I can't say that with 100% confidence.
Yeah.
I don't think
Which,
anybody can,
yeah,
but like you can definitely make that argument, right?
yeah. Which I
Um,
mean, like, that's what the distinction, the distinctions are is that just don't fucking waste your breath on saying that like voting for Biden is harm reduction. Just say you're a lib, and
Well, see,
I'm
that's
cool
the
with
thing.
it.
But that's not the way. Like people in this country, they don't have the political education to be able to distinguish the difference between like, uh, the normative argument and then like the the political theory argument, right? Like they just like people don't have the tools to be able to understand the long term thought processes of like the benefits of having a Biden in offices versus having the downsides of having Biden in office, which is to say, like you have potentially like a leftist movement that's significantly less, kind of like riled up, maybe that's not the right way to put it. A
They become like comfortable. They just become
right.
comfortable.
That's my point. Yeah. I mean, like, I don't think there's any doubt that like organizing under a Trump presidency, I think is way easier. I don't know. I could be wrong on this. I think it's easier to like organize under like a Trump presidency than it is to organize under a Biden presidency
I mean,
because like
we already know what it's like to organize because we're experiencing it. We have a precedent, but people have no precedence as of today, or how life or harm reduction or whatever sort of using to vote for Biden is going to be. And if you want to see any sort of precedent, look at his voting record, look who he's associated with, and look who he's made concessions with, which a good portion of them in his like early political life have been Republicans. And that's something that he's been running on is his ability to get along with them and his willingness
right.
to like concede to them. So
Right, and along those lines too, like I've seen from a couple, like I guess like the best word to describe them is like progressives. I wouldn't even call them rad libs. They're just like more um, slightly left of liberal by American standards. Um, have made the argument of or tried to draw the parallel of FDR, LBJ, and I believe somebody else, I can't remember, of how both LBJ and FDR, as flawed as they obviously were, I'm not going to get into that. Both of them, out of their administrations, did come social welfare programs that we still have today that I would definitely constitute as some form of progress. But anyways, they were trying to make that parallel of saying, hey, when they got into office, they were, basically the same. They didn't have any kind of radical agenda, blah, blah, blah. Well, I mean, that's just fucking bullshit, right? Like the FDR area, right. I mean, it's just hilarious bullshit because the FDR era was precedented by the largest leftist coalition movements this country had ever seen and has still have ever seen in the 30s, right? I mean, never had the socialist parties, the communist parties ever been as strong as they were back then. And then obviously in the LBJ era, there was the civil rights movement. And and to compare both of those presidents to a potential Joe Biden presidency is hilarious at best.
Well,
So
it's kind
yeah,
of stupid because the only thing that was mashed potatoes about FDR was his legs, not his fucking brain. So
right, and that's the other thing too, right? Like I don't know, like a lot of people like to hate on FDR, and I would say like he definitely deserves some hate because he wasn't perfect. I mean, that's an understatement, obviously. But like at the end of the day, like he did bring in a lot of good, and like for people to be comparing Biden to him, it's just kind of like how dumb are you? Like you really are you actually believing this? Like, or
yeah,
is it
Joe Biden,
something?
our era, FDR.
Yeah.
Really,
Right.
they're gonna
Like
run with
really, dude? Like, come on,
that.
man. And this like the person that it was, of course, it was on Twitter because we're all terminally online, right? That's the name of the show. Um, the person that
Don't
wrote
hit
this
everybody over the head with the shit.
was somebody who like you would think is not only somebody knowledgeable about at least level of political theory, but like I said, somebody that calls themselves something left of like liberal center, right? And so for them to see it, like for me to see them put that out there was like, oh boy, like one
I'm
of those
sure.
real doomer moments where you're just like, these are my allies, like, oh god, like Jesus, man.
I'm sure they come from a place of like really deep understanding. Like they grew up in Princeton, New Jersey, and then went to
Yeah,
Yale or something.
I
Like
don't know their full background, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it was like some kind of PMC level of thinking, that doesn't come as a surprise to me at all. But yeah, I don't know. But I don't know. Let's get back to one of the things that get back to the main topic. One of the
Wait,
things that has well,
well,
go ahead.
well, one of the things I want to bring up is with SDR and Biden Bernie is that we're seeing common things. Like FDR, he was the compromise of during
Right.
the 30s, the socialist movements, the communist movements. And there's this one note from a letter from a farmer from the Midwest saying to FDR in 1939 or 38, a couple, after he's elected, he says that he voted for him, he believed in all this stuff, but he says he failed what he wanted to do. So he says he was got to support every communist movement he can to end his reign, sort of thing. Not like the Midwest was more communist than per se now. But what we're seeing common areas with now is that people are not going to buy him from Bernie. Is that Bernie was the compromise, not the extreme sort of thing. So I'm seeing
Right.
a similarity there. So like if people actually expect the Dems to win, they have to understand that he was the compromise. That's the closest people we're gonna get. Well, there's plenty of radical liberals that think he was far enough, but there's plenty of people who saw him as the compromise, and what was it? Those swing state voters expect that compromise to be fulfilled. If not, they're not voting for the Dems.
Right. And that, I mean, this goes into like a greater topic that we're probably going to have to touch on another point, but that is a fantastic point, which is that, like, and I 100% agree with that, in that Sanders was the compromise. And that's why, I mean, me personally, I've not been in the greatest of moods the last, like, week or two, because, like, who the fuck is going to take up Bernie Sanders' helm as the leftist candidate? Like, the answer is nobody. Like, I mean, realistically, I mean, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, well, AOC will do it. She can run in 2024. Well, strictly from like, besides the point of like her not being nearly experienced enough to do that yet, her like just from a strictly like
Is she even
numbers,
old enough yet?
she will be in 2024.
Technically, if, like, I think September she would be like 35, which will technically count.
Right. But here's the thing. Strictly from a numbers standpoint, her popularity numbers, like on a national scale, are not even remotely close to what Bernie Sanders was. Bernie Sanders was the most popular senator in the entire United States. That is, you know, numerically proven through many different polls. And
Yeah,
AOC is very
people
unpopular, as much as
need
she is
to
popular with us.
Oh yeah, and then that
understand that.
what's this?
Go ahead, Paul. Go ahead, Paul.
Okay.
Yeah.
That unpopularity is coming from a lot of misinformation, because multiple times brings in the exact same things. Like, is she really wants to ban planes? You know, that kind of thing. And she asked that multiple times. So it's being repeated so much, people actually believe this. So if you'll ever want her expect her to succeed on national scale, you have to fix so much. And
Yeah,
like,
but that's but how do you do that?
And that's the thing. It's like, my mother repeats it, but that means it's being told her so many times that she forgets what I say. She forgets what other people say. And that, I think she represents a lot on just moderate Dems. Like, she only the only thing she remembers about politics of certain people is what it's repeatedly said in politics, like media, like, you know, CNN, MSNBC, all that stuff, and there are people, you know, Fox News, and Fox News is even worse. So, like,
Right.
You have to fix that, and, like, that will take so much effort.
I mean, not only, I mean, you're acting like that's even a solvable problem. Like, I don't even think that's something that you can realistically do.
Well, like, I believe it's a solvable problem, but that'll take, like, decades, where everyone
that's a multi-generational issue that you have to tackle. I mean, that's just mass media in general.
Yes.
Yeah,
But
and I'll get like super rad lady right now, but we're also dealing with an electorate that like does not like brown women. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Like, I, you know, I mean, first of all, Brandon, I take offense that you're taking over my role as Radlib on show. That's my job.
It's not gonna be long. Yeah, I just have a moment of rad liberty.
It's okay. It's okay. You can have that one moment. But I mean, yeah. At the end of the day, you have to play at a certain. You kind of have to play the game a little bit, man. Like, I don't know. It's my personal view. Obviously, you guys probably don't share it completely. But I think that the amount that you can organize is also tied to how bad material conditions are. And I don't think we've quite hit that point yet where organizing is it is still effective on a micro level, but if you want to get it to a macro level, i.e. a national scale, you need things to get worse before they get better, if that makes sense. And so fixing these kind of like institutional problems that plague the rest of whatever we have left of like our leftist politicians that could potentially run for president or run for higher office are not things that I believe we can get around. And I mean, granted, this is my opinion. It's a very doomer opinion, but I also think it's a very fair opinion. Like, I can't think of anybody who can take up Bernie Sanders' place in 2024. I mean, I'm open to suggestions. If anybody has any like, ideas, but
I
like,
don't have anything. And at this point, it's looking like they're gonna want to run fucking Cuomo, which at this point, like, as a Dem, he seems like the most willing to, like, you know, be aggressive. Like, I just don't see, and I think that that's a critical problem too. Is that, well, this isn't the left actually. This is like some sort of weird like amalgamation of just Twitter and like being online for too long, where they'll like people of the left or call themselves of the left are ready to criticize any sort of like detail that somebody fucks up or like lets something slip or gets too aggressive or alludes to something or
Wait, what do you
says
mean by that?
a
Explain that.
like some of the things that like making fun of somebody or whatever, like taking the piss out of somebody, like in certain circles that's like looked down upon, which I think that Les Bernie's campaign was adhering to rather than like being like a more aggressive. I don't know, but if you're ready to just start shitting on like a candidate or somebody of the left because they said something that wasn't like I don't know, for lack of a better like word, PC or whatever, then what the fuck are you doing here? Like seriously, that's not, this is neither the time nor the place. Like that person is more prone to learning from their mistakes than anybody else. And at this point, like the Dems are going to look for somebody who's aggressive, and the person that's unfortunately taking up that mantle is Andrew. So, I mean, you get what you deserve, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know enough about Cuomo to say one thing or another about him. Like I don't. I mean, I'm just assuming he's bad. I think that's a pretty safe assumption.
Yeah.
And anybody who's not, on our small list of, candidates, anybody who's not on that list is probably bad in some shape or form. But yeah, I don't know. Does it even matter though? Like, is the thing like if he's just like kind of another neo corporate dem, like, does it matter if he's more aggressive or not? Like, he's just gonna be aggressive for the wrong things, right? Like, it's kind of.
I don't know, because we got to start also thinking about the other side. Like, who are they going to run in 2020? Fucking Tom Cotton or some shit? Like,
Yeah, that would be
scary.
really bad. Yeah.
Which is scary. Like, seriously, like if they're not willing to go fucking aggro, at least pull like the electorate more to the left or something like that isn't a possibility, then what the fuck is there any use of them? You know what I mean? So.
Well, I mean, there is a couple of upshots of this entire primary that I like to take solace in, so that I don't completely fall off the deep end. Which is that the issues are not going away. Like, the actual material conditions are not going away, and I think that some people, it's very counterintuitive, yes, and is kind of like an example of our absolutely awful educational system and people's lack of political education, but despite Biden winning the nomination in every single primary state, I believe, I haven't kept up to date with like the last couple because I stopped caring. But in every single state, Medicare for all had more favorability than not favorability in every single exit poll that came out of these primary states. So, like I said, the issues are not going away, and people's mindset on these policies are not going away. Not to say that they can't be manipulated and taken advantage of, like, the rhetoric. I'm not saying that's not possible, but again, like, the material conditions are there. People are realizing that, hey, our healthcare system is completely fucked up. And Biden is, or rather, definitely not Biden. Bernie is to thank for a lot of that. He definitely helped shift the conversation to the left on a lot of these issues. And so I try to take solace in that and saying, even if we do get like a Joe Biden, or like, let's say they shovel him out for Como or whatever it is that happens at the convention, people did get pushed left, at least rhetoric wise. And so, I mean, I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens with that. But I mean, that can't be ignored, right? Like, that's something, surely. Or am I being too optimistic about that?
I mean, in terms of like people's like mass opinion, yeah, but in terms of like how they're going to actually vote and their behavior when voting when it comes to those issues, I don't know. I can't say. I don't know. So.
I mean, I guess I don't know either. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, honestly, fuck Biden. What was the next thing? We're gonna talk about AOC. I mean, we touched on AOC, but
Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of all this happened a little bit before, like a couple of weeks ago, but it definitely ties into what is the main theme of the Sanders campaign winding down, and kind of like I don't want to say falling apart, but I guess that's kind of what happened.
so what was she
Um,
doing? She was
there was an
flopping or
article that
something.
came out a couple of weeks ago that asserted that behind the scenes there was some strife between AOC and the Sanders campaign, and how she was unhappy with some of the things that and the way that the Sanders campaign conducted, primarily like the Joe Rogan endorsement. I guess AOC was apparently not happy about that. Um, Now, but it's important to say that later AOC came out and basically said that she didn't. This is the funny thing, is she didn't directly say that the story was not true, but she also made sure to reinforce that she was very much still a supporter of the Sanders campaign and that they were on good terms and blah 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 blah. But
Just
I
not
think that
enough to where like one of the largest like online personalities endorses him that she's willing to like be okay with that.
well, I mean, but I think like the greater like theme that I wanted to like touch upon on this subject is like this story acted as kind of like a wedge issue to try to like um, rile up the left against each other, and like how the left is kind of susceptible to these kind of attacks, um, and like kind of like why that is. Like it feels like the left oftentimes has kind of like a victim complex,
Yeah, that
and
shit got me.
not, yeah, and it's like not to say that there's no like good reason for that, because there's definitely a lot of evidence for there to be like actually have a good victim complex. Um but that being said, like it can clout your mind and make yourself make somebody like very susceptible to stories like these that try to like divide the left. So I was kind of thinking, I don't want to get your guys' thoughts on that in general, and then if you guys had any thoughts on like if the story was true and the way that AOC is kind of like, a lot of people are saying that she's made kind of like a pivot to being more of like a politician, and whether or not that's something you guys think is true, and then if it's a good or a bad thing.
Go ahead, Sweet Paul.
What was it? What was the divide is really being pushed, by all sides, sort of thing. And what was it? Not aiming for that much of stuff for sort of thing. What was it? I consider, AOC to be pretty weak on some policies, but like, that's everyone perceives her as, the next, Fidel Castro or something. The imagery wise, as in like them trying to attack Bernie, AOC, and all that stuff to disintegrate a movement, sort of thing. So it's definitely a problem that needs to be dealt with. Well,
Right. I mean, that's definitely how the right likes to portray her, right? And then even some like more moderate liberals,
oh yeah,
they like to like paint her as like some Leninist, Marxist, authoritarian communist figure of some sort, which is obviously not true at all.
oh
Um,
yeah,
no, go ahead.
oh yeah, and I was about to say like in her district and even state, she's popular, but outside that state, people still believe like what myths that you see in like those early 2000s chain emails of like this person believes you should eat kittens or something like that.
Right.
One of my family members even believes that every time I bring her up, she's like, does she still want to ban planes? And I say no every time. I have to explain it every single time, and I have to repeat this. But this shows that people only believe, a lot of these moderate Dems only believe what they saw on the mass media news sites. So if, like, I repeat it multiple times, but like if it's repeated dozens of times from this news source, then they will believe it even though I prove otherwise. It's a lot on the mass media mega structure that is in the United States, which is a real problem. Which people have a very bad thing of dropping, or pretend they dropped it, or think they dropped it, but then just go to another one, sort of thing. They believe like they dropped Fox, so they think they're good on manipulation, but they go to CNN, and vice versa. So that is a very... So I think if we ever gotta fix imagery issues with any leftists, we have to deal with that. It's a very hard structure. Like, people have written about a lot already. You know, Chomsky is on the manipulation of the narrative. And it's been going along for a long time. So like, it needs to be dealt with if you want anything.
I don't know how you do that. Is the thing. I don't. I just.
Well, that's the thing with those on like doing on an individual level. Is like you actually have to do it on an individual level. I'm trying to. I got my parents pretty say like not far left, but like pretty left, as people say beforehand. But everyone needs to do like with their parents, their friends, their associates, and all that stuff. I think I'm doing a good job. I think everyone needs to do it if they want to actually do something. And that's why I don't like when people are like, "You believe this? Have no then they'll cut off all connections." That's not doing any help for anyone.
Right.
It's got to do more harm if we're gonna cut off. Well, I mean, like, there's some people that we cannot. I mean, like, well, we can help. But I believe we can get anyone. I have gotten people that were like, pretty far right, but then all of a sudden now leftists. But the best is the best you can try, sort of thing, and try not to take things too seriously, because that's another thing. Maybe people like to use you as an example. Like people will say outrageous statements and try to make you say things that you don't actually want, or things they want you to say to actually confirm their own false narrative, sort of thing. So when people say you're a communist, well, you have to agree. Like, they want you to say that to think you're Stalin or with Mao or all that stuff. But then the best way to solve against that is actually explaining to everything. Like, it's not actually just saying state your own opinions. Those never work. Don't state you can state your opinions, but that won't convince anyone. To actually convince anyone, it's actually how to explain it. You need to actually explain like an instructions manual, basically. It's like, we got to this, now this solution is preferable, sort of thing, with these examples and solutions, and if you need, preferably you want to tackle the main core and all that stuff. Well, that's...
So I guess specifically going back to like the original question, which is that like you think AOC, or I guess it was a two-prong, which you kind of addressed the first one, which is that do you think that the left is especially susceptible to kind of like this kind of mass media manipulation of like driving a wedge between like somebody like AOC, who's maybe not as left as certain leftists would like her to be, or they disagree with a couple of her policies, and therefore kind of effectively alienate her from the left by painting her as a bad figure, and then kind of undermine her ability to actually do stuff and participate in Congress. Like, so do you think that the left is like especially susceptible to that? And do you think that it's something that we should be focusing on and organizing and like and not purity testing, or like, well, what do you think is the solution to something like that, or how do you insulate yourself from like potential people trying to break up the left?
I have a question for you. I have this entire plan I discussed with many other people online. Should we do that for the last bit? Because we got like an hour, 17 minutes. You want to do that for the last bit?
I mean, sure, yeah. We can do that later if you want.
Oh, I mean, because I want to discuss how to make, because you brought up purity tests and, coalitions and stuff, sort of thing, and I already have this plan, so you want to go over that for the last bit?
Sure. I mean, we can do that if that's what you'd like to do.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And, it would be a great transition from AOC to this.
Okay.
Okay, because that's the major question. Do we count like AOCs in like communist movements and whatever? Well, that would be a question. Okay, and so you're asking about we should less focus on purity tests and more focus on like helping each other, or what was that one question?
I mean, yeah, just kind of along those lines, right? Like that's something that, like, it's like the big one of my favorite memes is the one, like, you guys know the Bambi next to like
Oh, the
the
one
dead
with,
mom, right? And
and
then
then
like it
there's
says, the left, and then also the left with like the hunter with the gun, right? Like
no,
that's like
yeah.
probably my favorite way of describing the left, like specifically online,
Yeah,
is that like everybody's eating each other because everybody, like, no, I shouldn't say everybody, a lot of people like to purity test certain people, which again, like, I don't want to say that purity testing is like exclusively bad, because it's not, I wouldn't say, but I would say that there it can be very harmful and like purity testing somebody like AOC who's already in Congress, where the rules are very different from
Yeah.
online, uh, can be detrimental, I guess. I don't know. That's my view of it, at least.
Okay, yes. Purity test? I think there is.
Yeah, but honestly,
on.
like
Go on.
she's going for planes now. If she
Uh,
starts going for trains, that's when we have to take up action.
of course, trains are the best.
Yeah.
Luckily, she hasn't gone against those, which is great. And the planes is just. Well, I mean, like she's sort of against it, but she's not like banning it or something, sort of thing. So, one of the things I do actually believe in is maybe we should start doing a purity test, but not like, oh, this person lost, now we apply this because I can feel authority over them, but more of like a local level purity tests sort of thing. Like, I think AOC is a fine for her level, like, sort of thing. But like, I think if we want to get a bigger leftist movement, we need to focus on local level, like city, state representative, of your state house. Like, people need to focus on like state and city stuff. Like, so when people are going to those local levels and seeing, like, oh, these people are either socialists, now we can all unite and do something about something, because like what drives success is we need success behind that. So if we gain something smaller movements, we can actually bring something on a national level. So there's this talk, I've been talking to quite a bit of people online, like especially foreigners and people in like other communists or social democrat or democratic socialist parties around the world. Well, I won't say it's like that much. I would say like it's just like 7 people or a dozen. No, technically a dozen. But like to actually get success for these types of movies is that we need to actually have a level of requirements, like actually talk about things like theory or talk about what we know, like proof that we know about our economics. Like maybe have a requirement that you need, your red theory, like red marks, like that was a requirement for like the Viet Cong, the requirements for the Black Panthers. Those are requirements for a lot of movements. So when we see these people online saying like really cringy stuff that like misrepresents the entire movement, people can take that out of context or in context because it was such a cringy moment. Then that be used as fuel. Well, like, we just need to starve out. Unfortunately, this is the internet of things, so one person could just say it and then it could be repeated over to millions of people 1,000 times and no one will care. But like, to actually get good representation on a local level so we can get other people to convince people, we actually need sort of like to prove themselves, sort of thing, and build strength and success off of that.
Are you talking like specifically in like running candidates that like, or you're talking about like organizing in general?
Organizing in general, but but I also could see a really good almost like a caucus, like sort of like a caucus where other people will help each other get elected, to get more power in the electoral movements, but like also in organization in general.
Have either of you guys heard of the movement called West Virginia Can't Wait?
No.
No. This is almost sounds almost exact. I mean, to a less militant degree, and they're probably not as left as we are, but they're doing something very, very similar in West Virginia. It's called West Virginia Can't Wait, but it's basically an entire movement of people, of like 50 to 100 people or so, that are running all at different levels of office within West Virginia. And it's part of one movement. I highly recommend you look it up. There's a really good article explaining it. But I linked it in our group chat a while ago, many months ago. But super, super interesting read of like how politics could be. It sounds like exactly with what you're describing.
Yeah, like
Which is like an actual like caucus movement of people running for office that all share a kind of like a set of ideals, a constitution of ideals, if you will, that is written out that everybody follows, right? Like I'm assuming that's what you're saying, like that everybody
My
agrees.
man,
Like,
are you talking about council communism?
well, well, when we get down to praxis, maybe, but like, yeah. Yeah, and one of the most who try to build like more detailed plan as possible. This Greek communist I know, he talks about that we need to set the limits where we get a caucus, and it doesn't have to be any. There's no limitation on party. This is not a party nor a loose organization. It's like somewhere in between. Like if there be funding, there be organization and groups, but like also affect in politics as well. But it's not divided by party lines because we already have enough parties. That's definitely a thing. That's the problem. Like we have too many parties. Like West Coast, East Coast, different divides, all that stuff. And where to make things actually organized is that you join this caucus sort of type thing. You have to run at least for 2 years. He suggested 2 years to run, so that that person is well educated in this practice and to actually shows they can succeed, or at least knows how to succeed. Another thing is that they must prove they have a knowledge of basic Marxist theory, leftist theory, all that stuff. So they obviously show that they have proof that they read things from Marx, like fully, like read all Das Kapital, no footnotes or something like that, where they can't just skim it. I mean, like look over a summary. They actually need to prove it, and we can involve other people there as well. Well, we try not to do too much. We don't avoid too many people, and try to gain much as possible. Because even Lenin talked about how the powers of electoralism can be used. Like he was like in the Labor Party of Russia for many years. And, he didn't really say, oh, we didn't win this election, time to give up. No, they have that power. Like, they don't need a simple majority to show a power and create change. And when the 1910s, and when he came back in that armored train back into Russia, it was the perfect opportunity to him to show that's when electoral has ended, sort of thing. But we haven't reached that point yet. So, yeah, we need a more well-defined organization, sort of thing, to to create success and further success.
I mean, okay, so I'll just jump in and say, like, that sounds great, but the level of militancy that you're asking for in an organization like that is something that's just not, in my opinion, that is just not possible on a large scale. And I know you say start out local, but even on a local level, you need some kind of like scaling to win office, right? Like it's not like the AOC winning her thing. Like I think like 6,000 people came out to vote or something like that. Like that's really small.
Well,
so like
it's New York. It's the vision's cut and tiny, and she's way more popular now. But like local level, it can't work because like in Philadelphia, there's like what is it, 2 Maoists and a Marxist-Leninists in the city council sort of thing.
Is there? Okay. I mean, I guess I don't know enough. And I guess, isn't Chicago, the entire city council, like most of them are socialists in Chicago? Is that like a thing? Or I've heard.
I know they're Democrats, but I'm not sure about socialists. I think maybe some of them are. I know that. I know there's some more, but I'm not sure all.
Yeah.
And I know in Seattle there is a what was it, a
I don't remember her name, but I know exactly who you're talking
yeah,
about.
I think she's a trot though. And though I have problems with trots, I would not like cut her out of this caucus. Well, if she does prove all her stuff, she knows Marxist theory.
I don't know. I don't want to say too much without letting Brandon talk, but like again, this is where my kind of more electoral focus brain goes to when you talk about this kind of stuff, is that yes, all of this would be absolutely amazing if you can get it going, but I don't think that you are going to be able to get it going when material conditions are still not at like crisis levels. Like it really takes a jolting of like people's material lives and daily lives for them to actually care about politics in general, and then for them to actually care about looking into politics and policies that might deviate from what it is that they whatever team that they normally vote for, right? Like that's the way that most Americans look at politics, and I don't think we're there yet. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Hopefully, I'm wrong.
Next week will be a month to like lockdown or whatever, and the people that just don't give a shit are the ones that are acting like nothing's going on and are still like out and doing like their shit as if nothing's going on or there's no risk of getting sick or anything. So there's still a lot of like ground to make up, but I think we do have to look at like short term, and so I think I want to say like if this shit is still going on by like June, we're gonna see like a ramping up of like radical. Because I'm actually starting to see people getting actually pissed at Bernie now. So
I mean, which people though? That's something I wanted to talk about too, but I didn't really have a chance to fit in.
Yeah, well, when I say that, it's definitely not libs or progressives. So I feel like
so not the majority of people, right? Like it's important to distinguish that.
Yeah, it's definitely people that like supported him, and I guess deep down inside did see him as a kind of like compromise with like good ideals, and now it's pushing a lot of people like to the left. Because I get this feeling that most of the people that a majority of people are used to like watching online and shit that are now saying like, well, I mean, voting for Biden is like election now, are definitely fucking groupers. So there needs to be at least a little bit of calling out the left, but at the same time, right now, is it really worth it? Like as of right now, what's more like challenging the right wing establishment or challenging some fucking from like Hartford, Connecticut or some shit on Twitter with 3 followers? Like really, it's like who's the amalgamation that's going to get fucking angry? Them? Like the people in power who are fucking our shit up right now.
Yeah. But you mentioned something, calling out people and all that stuff. That's another thing we need to focus on. Is like we need to actually take criticisms and all that stuff. That's really important because like we actually need to learn how to. If people lose an election, you need to actually learn how to win the next election, sort of thing. So if you learn what people are doing wrong, then maybe you can fix that or convince other people of these problems. Because if we're going to ignore problems, that will lead to failure. And that's part of the other thing. Like that's why we need more success in like when all that stuff to show that they won't cause force problems. They can keep their cool, learn all that stuff. And that should be it. I mean, that should be for me. Is there anything else you want to say?
In regards to into the organization, I don't know. I kind of said everything I want to say. I by no means am I an expert on this, and I can already think of the things of certain people that might end up listening to this podcast episode, screaming at in their rooms or wherever the heck they're listening to this, screaming at me. I can already hear them. By no means am I an expert on like organizing by any means, and so like my knowledge of understanding on what's effective and how much effectiveness you can have, and like organizing a kind of like I don't know, what do you want to call it, like a vanguard political group of, I don't know, how would you describe what you were mentioning?
Oh, it's funny. He describes it like a united workers front, and like that's what we should call it, actually, a united workers front.
Okay.
And because that's another thing I also see a problem with. A lot of the socialist movements, we're focusing too much on like students per se. We're students, but like we need to actually get a workers' revolution to happen. We need to focus on the most important thing, the workers. Like one of the we need to like actually come out to them and try to support us, because they have their own issues and all that stuff. So that's why some things like free healthcare doesn't work on certain people, because it's like they already have like benefits and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So like we can't just say free healthcare. We actually need to explain of the systems. And there's this term I heard about recently. It was the something fence. Give me a second. Charleston's fence sort of thing. That's like the theory where you have to actually know the thing you're currently on to get to the next part. Like you actually have to know what's happening. So if we want to get to a better workers movement, we actually need to understand the workers sort of thing. And one thing I saw recently, someone like posted this quote about students and things, because it was involving the labor in the UK, because people were saying the labor was going too much to the students sort of thing. And someone brought this quote about, and the original quote was talking about the change of the hammer or sickle of the Communist Party, France, and the author talked about how we're forgetting about the symbolism here. We're forgetting about the entire purpose. Like the hammer and sickle represents the uniting of the peasant and the worker. Well, if we're gonna change it to anything, it's got to be united of the peasant and the spoiled brat sort of thing. So that's like we actually need to understand the synergy or the solidarity for the workers to actually get things going.
Yeah, I mean, again, in theory, it's like it makes sense. And it would definitely have a good effect on people's lives and growing power. I'm not sold yet, me personally. I don't think we're quite there yet, as far as
Whack.
as far as like material conditions being bad. I mean, because I don't know. That's what I frame like my analysis on, is that are things bad enough for a majority amount of people, for that kind of poor material conditions to overcome like the American ideology that's been baked into everybody's head through our education system and just everything around us? Are those material conditions bad enough to overcome that kind of indoctrination? And the answer is still no for me personally. Like I don't think we're quite there yet.
Well,
Which is why I think you still have to play the electoralism game. Not to say that organizing is bad. In fact, it is extremely good, specifically on the micro level, like you were saying. But even on the micro level, it's like extremely hard, and it's certainly not guaranteed, and it definitely requires like a level of militancy that like is just way too much to ask for normal people because material conditions are not bad enough yet. That's just my take. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like we kind of need to get prepared. Like, there's been many examples when a party will get a couple percent in one election and then become one of the biggest parties in the next election. Like, one of the examples, what was it? That the recent Irish election showed like, the party was basically political wing for the IRA was getting, like, couple percent every election, but then recently now they're one of the biggest parties there. Like, they went from a two.
Okay, but I gotta stop you right there because like you have to be fair. Like if you're gonna make that comparison, like the Irish, I believe, have a parliamentary system, which means that multiple parties are already allowed to exist. We do not have that in this country, and we will probably never have that in this country, but not until something like even more crazy happens. Material conditions get worse, right? Like that's the only way the third party would ever see any kind of force. Material conditions get worse. So I don't know. I don't buy into that. I can't buy that comparison because like our political system is completely different.
But they're a parliamentary system, but they ran off of two-party system for like us for a very long time. Well, not the longest of times, but like us, but like it was still a two-party system. But then all of a sudden it was like that. But that's because they were ready to take the opportunity to take whatever happened. Like, something can happen the next day, and then all of a sudden a workers' party can use that to grow very large. But
what was the trigger then? What was the trigger for that third party being able to, like, if it was as entrenched as you say it was, if power was entrenched like within those two parties for I don't know, let's say, well, how did that happen? Like, what made it that both of those parties lost power that a third party could come in and?
Yeah, it wasn't like the biggest of catastrophes. Well, it was a catastrophe there, but it wasn't like worldwide or something. There was like having simple crisis. Well, simple, but like crisis still. Like there were a housing crisis. There's Brexit right on their neighbor. There was the question of Northern Ireland coming up again due to Brexit and all that stuff. Well, like those were like things like Brexit. It's only like once in a very, very long time, those types of situations. Right. So like they got ready and they grew pretty big. And like I'm not Irish, I'm not in Ireland, but I know there was like it's not like hunky dory there, but something did came up and they used it.
Right, but I guess the point is then again that like if Brexit was the driving force behind that, which you can also argue was the driving force behind the UK elections in December, then that counts as kind of like a cataclysmic event of like at least perceived changing conditions. And like I don't see that happening here unless like things continue to get worse and worse with like this, with the economy going to hell, and then like if I don't know. Again, like it just everything has to get worse before people are open to something like that. Is I guess my point, right? And there has to be some kind of driving force that makes people reassess their positions. And in the United States, I think that our indoctrination into American ideology, as a result of the lack of any kind of political education or any exposure to any other kind of ideologies in this country, makes it an even worse kind of scenario for wanting to break up the two parties and run a kind of like neoliberal capitalist party. Like it's just the conditions they're bad. I mean, there's a reason why people call this place like a failed state.
Yeah, well, like
because like our conditions
rule
here
out
are horrible.
COVID, dude.
What's that?
I wouldn't rule out COVID.
I mean, yeah, I don't disagree. I get, but we're still not there yet. Is my point.
Oh, like that's the thing. That's the United Workers Front. It doesn't, as I said, it's not a party. So I said they could be in any party. So that could even be in the Democratic Party, preferably. Yeah, but preferably they have to be pretty Marxist. Like, what was it? There's been like actual like people in the like pure up like Marxist-Leninists in the Democratic Party, but like not in a long time, and not like Marxist-Leninists, but like still showing very radical signs. And that's the special thing about local level, because like say in California we have a homeless problem and a housing problem and all that stuff, and those things can be used to show as you said, the mirror conditions to show that can create change. And like in Chicago, I heard there's also like crime and health, and the South there's like just lack of funding for anything. So like the South, it's a third world country down there. And I'm not being biased. It's reported being on levels of being a third world undeveloped country. So like there is plenty of opportunities at local levels. People actually need to take those local levels. And like people are suggesting like maybe we should all leftists of a certain ideology should go to like a state basically and like just take over everything, which wouldn't be that much of a bad idea. But like that would require so much coordination and money and time and all that stuff. But it'd be better if we just did a United Workers Front.
And on that note, I think we should be wrapping it up here.
Yeah, is there anything else anybody want to touch on briefly? I feel like we were kind of all over the place. I think we probably need to work on our structuring a little bit better. Maybe organize our discussions a little bit better.
Well,
we can talk about that. I'm
Yeah.
just gonna go. I'm kind of hungry.
Okay, let's do our outro and what was it? Call for a day. And I'll get ready for this. Okay, so that was our podcast for Terminally Online. This is our first episode, so many things are still new to us, so we will focus on fixing them. And if there's any suggestions of what we should fix, please suggest that. And for that, what was it? I'm Paul, and this is Terminally Online. May I hand to the other people for outro as well?
Yep. Bye, guys. Adios.
Later.
Okay, and that'll be it. Goodbye.
There's a better world that's a-comin', don't you see, see. There's a better world that's a-comin', don't you see. When we'll all be union and we'll all be free. There's a better world that's a-comin', don't you see. There's a better world a-comin', don't you know, no. There's a better world that's a-comin', don't you know. I'm a union man in a union war, it's a union world I'm fighting for. There's a better world that's a-comin', don't you know. There's a better world that's a-comin', there's a better world that's a-comin', there's a better world that's a-comin', I'll tell you why. Don't you see, and don't you know, no. Hey, there's a better world that's a-comin', I'll tell you why. There's a better world that's a-comin', I'll tell you why. There's a better world that's a-comin', tell you why. Better world that's a-comin', tell you why. Out of marching, out of battling, you can hear the chains are rattling. There's a better world that's a-comin', I'll tell you why. Now there's a better world that's a-comin', and there's a better world that's a-comin', and there's a better world that's a-comin', I'll tell you why. There's a better world that's a-comin', and don't you see. Better world that's a-comin', I'll tell you see. Better world that's a-comin', and don't you see. Well, there's a better world that's a-comin', I'll tell you why. There's a better world that's a-comin', I'll tell you why. We'll beat 'em on the land, in the sea, and in the sky. There's a better world that's a-comin', I'll tell you why. Well, there's a better world that's a-comin', don't you see. Better world that's a-comin', don't you see. When we'll all be union and we'll all be free. There's a better world a-comin', don't you see. There's a better world a-comin', don't you see. Better world a-comin', don't you see. When we'll all be union and we'll all be free. There's a better world that's a-comin', don't you see.